Throughout his life, Joseph Smith, the prophet of the Restoration, endured a variety of trials and hardships. It can be hard to understand why he had to suffer things like death of his children and false imprisonment. In this video, we will take a closer look at these experiences and learn how the Lord used trials to shape Joseph into the prophet he needed to be to lead the church and restore the gospel. Let's take a look at the prophet's childhood. When Joseph was only 7 years old, he was diagnosed with typhoid fever. An infection developed in his left leg, and he was told that it would need to be amputated. A skilled surgeon named Dr. Nathan Smith performed an experimental surgery on Joseph's leg in an effort to save it. The procedure was extremely painful. Joseph's mother even left the room so she wouldn't have to hear his cries of pain. Joseph's leg was ultimately saved, but he walked with a limp for the rest of his life. The cost of the surgery was also a great financial burden to his parents. Joseph's parents in particular recognized the hand of the Lord in the preservation of Joseph's leg. This experience was likely a constant reminder to Joseph that God will preserve his servants if he wills it so, and that he needs to trust in the Lord's will. After Joseph's revelatory first vision experience, he was constantly ridiculed for having shared it with others.
Mind your own business, Smith. Worry about your brother. Hey, Joseph! You seen any visions lately?
Joseph himself said, "I soon found that my telling the story had excited a great deal of prejudice against me among professors of religion and was the cause of great persecution, which continued to increase." Before reaching adulthood, Joseph Smith became well acquainted with opposition that continued to grow as the Restoration progressed through his adult years. A few years later, Joseph Smith began his work of translating the golden plates. A man named Martin Harris assisted as a scribe during the translation. After about 2 months of transcribing, the first 116 pages of the Book of Mormon had been produced. Martin Harris wanted to take the plates to show his family and friends. Joseph asked God if Martin could take the pages, and God refused. Joseph continued to ask repeatedly until the Lord said Martin could take them, on the condition that he showed them only to his family. Martin showed them to his family, but then he broke his promise and revealed them to several other people. He subsequently lost the 116 pages. This was a very difficult time for Joseph. He recognized that the pages were lost because of his disobedience. In Doctrine and Covenants, section 3, God rebukes Joseph for not following his commandments. Joseph's ability to translate was also taken away for a time. Joseph had to learn a hard lesson about obedience and trusting in the Lord. He later wrote in his journal, "I made this my rule. When the Lord commands, do it." Joseph also suffered as a father. His first child was named Alvin after Joseph's deceased older brother. The baby only lived a few moments after birth. After moving to Kirtland, Ohio, Joseph and Emma became pregnant again. They had twins, both of which died within hours of their birth as well. Joseph and Emma adopted another set of healthy twins, but one of them also passed away 11 months later, after exposure to cold air during an attack on Joseph by a mob. They had several more healthy children after this, but lost 2 more sons during their lives. After having faced death so many times, the prophet was profoundly aware of life after death, the resurrection, and the eternal nature of the family. Joseph said in one of his discourses that the only difference between the old and young dying is, one lives longer in heaven and eternal light and glory than the other, and is freed a little sooner from this miserable, wicked world. Persecution followed Joseph throughout his life. One former member of the church, Ezra Booth, wrote anti-Mormon letters to a newspaper in Ohio, telling lies about Joseph Smith and the church. One night, a group of men who had read Booth's letters decided to go after the prophet. This was the same mob that ultimately caused the death of his baby son when they broke into his home. One article described it this way: "The men dragged Joseph outside, swearing and threatening to kill him. They choked him, tore off his clothes, and tried to push a paddle of hot tar and a bottle of acid into his mouth. The bottle of acid broke, chipping one of Joseph's teeth and causing him to speak with a whistle for the rest of his life. The mob decided not to kill Joseph, but they scratched him severely, spread hot tar all over his body, and covered him with feathers. Joseph made it home to Emma, who fainted at the sight of him. The next Sunday, Joseph went to preach to the saints as he usually did. Several members of the mob who tarred and feathered him were present, but Joseph did not mention the violence and taught the gospel of Christ as he usually did. On December 1st, 1838, Joseph Smith faced one of the most horrific trials of his short life, incarceration in Liberty Jail. The prophet was held against false charges and spent 4 months in the Missouri prison. Joseph and his associates in the prison described it as hell surrounded by demons. The jail was frigid, dirty, and dark. The ceiling was so low they couldn't stand, and they were occasionally tied with chains. The guards constantly harassed them and fed them food laced with poison that caused them to puke. Joseph did not know if he would ever get out and see his family or fellow saints again. He pleaded with the Lord, "O God, where art thou? And where is the pavilion that covereth thy hiding place? Yea, O Lord, how long shall thy people suffer these wrongs and unlawful oppressions, before thine heart shall be softened toward them, and thy bowels be moved with compassion toward them?" In his despair the Lord told him, "My son, peace be unto thy soul. Thine adversity and thine afflictions shall be but a small moment. And then, if thou endure it well, God shall exalt thee on high. Thou shalt triumph over all thy foes." This revelation helped Joseph endure his suffering in Liberty Jail. He survived the experience and did not see another prison until his death. Joseph Smith did not lead an easy life. However, the Lord summarized perfectly why he had to suffer when he said, "Thine affliction shall be but a small moment, and then, if thou endure it well, God shall exalt thee on high." Joseph continued in faithful discipleship until the time of his death. He put his trust in the Lord, and God guided him through every single trial. Joseph's life today serves as a powerful lesson in the importance of trusting in God and in patiently enduring all things.